Welcome to Mixing It Up with Erica. Today we are going to make honey buns. It's a delicious, sweet, yeasty treat. That sounds good to you. Stick around and let's mix it up. Now the first thing we're going to do to get started is we need to proof our yeast. And what that means is we are going to get some warm water. Now you do not want to be over 110 degrees. Anything over 110 degrees will kill the yeast. And then you're not going to get that rise you're looking for. So what we're going to do is turn on your sink, let it get hot. To our bowl, we will just add half a cup of warm water. For the yeast, you need 2 1/4 teaspoons. So now that's the same as 1 packet. A half a teaspoon of sugar. We're just going to give that a little stir. Now we are going to let that proof. While our yeast is proofing, we are going to go ahead and get the rest of our ingredients ready. For today's recipe, you are going to need. We need a half a cup of scalded milk for our honey buns. So there are 2 ways you can do that. One, you can do it in a saucepan at about a medium-high heat until you start to get bubbles around the edges of your pan. A second option would be to put it in the microwave in a microwave-safe cup for about 45 seconds to a minute. That's what we're going to do. Try to keep it simple around here. Okay, once you have your scalded milk, you are going to add 2 tablespoons of butter, 3 tablespoons of sugar. 1, 2, 3. And we are also going to add a half a teaspoon of salt. I like to use a pink Himalayan salt, but whatever salt you prefer, that's up to you. Now once you have your sugar, butter, and salt in with your scalded milk, you're just going to give it a light stir to make sure that butter gets a nice melt on it and get everything combined for us. Now that the yeast is proofing and we have our scalded milk with the butter, salt, and sugar off to the side, letting that slightly cool because we do not want our milk to be too warm when we add it to our yeast. Again, if it is too hot, it'll kill the yeast. It's not what we want, so we're just going to let that sit off to the side. I'm going to use a stand mixer today. If you do not have one, you can mix in a bowl with a spoon. However, I do recommend a stand mixer for this recipe. It's just simpler. Let the stand mixer do the work for you. Okay, we have our stand mixer all set up and we have a dough hook attachment. So let's check. Our yeast is proofed. See how it's nice and bubbly and it's foamed up. That's what you're looking for in a nice proofed yeast. Now we have our proofed yeast. We are just going to add that right into our stand mixer. Next, we are going to check on our milk. We do not want the milk to be too hot. Our scalded milk mixture that has the sugar, salt, and butter. Just make sure that butter got all melted in nice. We're going to check the temp first. You could just stick your finger in there, make sure it's not too hot. I like to use my thermometer. Okay, and it's showing that we are at 100 degrees, which means that it is still warm, but not hot enough to kill our yeast. So we are going to add that right into our mix. 2 eggs. We're going to add that right in. Do wash your hands. If you get egg all over your fingers, take a moment to wash your hands. Don't be getting salmonella all over your kitchen. Next, you're going to add 1 cup of flour. Now, it's always best with your flour to scoop and level it. You'll see I have a nice little scoop. I mean, when you're working with flour, it really doesn't matter what you do. It's going to make a mess, you know, and that's okay. Life is messy sometimes. Just clean it up when you're done. So we're going to add that in, this down, and we are going to turn it on and let it work a little bit. And now we will keep adding in a 1/4 cup of flour at a time until it starts to form the dough. What we're looking for is for our dough to come together and start to pull away from the side and kind of clean itself up. It's not a bad idea if you're using a stand mixer to scrape some of that flour off your bowl. So far, I've added in 1.5 cups. Remember now we are just doing 1/4 cup at a time until our dough forms and pulls itself off the edges of the bowl. As you can see, we are still waiting on that dough to come together, so we're going to add in another 1/4 cup of flour. Fold that in. So we are at about 2 cups of flour now. Gonna let that mix really well for a moment before we add in any more. Our dough is starting to come together now. It's starting to pull itself from the edges of the bowl. It's still a bit sticky, and if your mixer isn't throwing flour out of the bowl, are you even baking? Now that our dough is pulled away from the bowl, we are going to knead it on a floured surface. You just plop your dough out on your floured surface. With kneading our dough, what we are looking for is a smooth, satiny type of finish on our dough ball. Now in kneading, you just do a 1/4 turn at a time, fold it in on itself, give it a roll, turn, roll. Let's see. You see how it's looking? That's what we're looking for. Now that we have that nice, smooth, satiny dough ball, we need a bowl and a little ball. You want to grease your bowl before putting your dough ball inside because you don't want your dough to stick. After it's had time to rise and double, you'll want it to come easily out of your bowl for you. Pop in your dough ball. Once your dough ball is in the bowl, you're going to want to cover it so that way it doesn't dry out during the rising process. I just use saran wrap, but you can use a shower cap or whatever works best for you. Okay, and I also like to put a clean towel on mine. I put this in a warm location for about an hour to give it time to double. My oven has a bread-proof setting, which is roughly 95 degrees. That's what I use for proofing my breads. If you do not have that setting on your oven, just setting it inside your oven and turning on the light is an option. Just make sure you remember it's in there and don't preheat your oven with your dough in there. Set it on top of your fridge. That's a warm location, or even just on top of your stove. It can be a great location for that warm environment that your dough needs to rise. I'm going to use the bread setting on my oven. While we wait for our dough to rise, we are going to go ahead and make our honey butter. So for that, you need put your 1/2 cup of butter in your saucepan, 1/2 cup of brown sugar. We want 1/2 cup of honey. The honey is what makes it honey buns. So I'm going to turn that on to a medium-high heat until it all comes together. We have our 1/2 cup butter, 1/2 cup brown sugar, 1/2 cup of honey in the saucepan on the stove. We are on a medium-high heat, and we are just going to wait for it to melt. It's starting to come together nicely. Our honey butter is all nice and melted. Come together. Now this is going to be too thin to work with, so we are going to remove it from the heat, let it cool for a moment, and we'll put it in the fridge until it's a nice spreadable consistency for our dough. Okay, it's been about an hour. Let's see how our dough has risen. It's doubled in size, so that's perfect. We're going to set that there while we prep our counter space. We are going to need to flour the surface. Last thing you want is your dough to stick now. Our countertop is nicely floured. Just going to take our dough, dump it out. Now we're going to roll out our dough. You may need to flour your rolling pin. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're just a rough rectangle is what we're looking for. Try to keep a nice even thickness. You can see it's had time to cool, so it's still kind of thin, a little thicker, but still on the thinner side. We're just going to pour some on. Not all, These are honey buns. We need some to put on the outside of our honey buns as well. Spread it out. You want to leave space around the edge because as you roll, you're going to squish out the filling. It smells so good right now. There's no measurements here. It's to your liking. Once you have your honey butter to your likings on your roll, this is where we are going to roll, cook, and roll. Takes a second to get started. And if you don't have honey butter all over your fingers when you're done with this part, did you even roll a honey butter? Start at the center and work it out. I like to pull that last little bit up and over just to avoid the extra mess on my counter. You can keep rolling, of course, but I do have to say that that last squish really loves to make a mess. This is the pan I will be using for my honey buns. What you like. We are going to take some of that honey butter and drizzle on the bottom. Right? Because they're honey buns. You want that honey butter everywhere. And so when these are all done and we pop them out of the pan, all this to just kind of melt and be ooey gooey on top. Now we've got our honey bun rolls. I cut off the ends because those are kind of doughy. Just kind of cut a consistent sizing, similar to cinnamon rolls. Use your knife to help you get them in the pan. They are very messy. They are delicious. Now you can cut them thicker if you like a thicker honey bun, as thick as you like, or as thin as you like. Just cover them with saran wrap, and we can use the same towel. Give them a cover, and I'm going to pop them back in the oven. I'm going to start with 30 minutes. Okay, it's been about a half an hour. Let's see how our honey buns are looking. Now, before we look, we do want to preheat our oven at this point to 375. See, look at that. They have risen again quite beautifully. Now we are going to wait for our oven to preheat to 375. We'll just let them sit a little longer. Now that our oven is preheated to 375 degrees, we are going to take the remaining honey butter and put it over the top of our honey buns. If your honey butter has gotten too thick, you can warm it back up to get it to be more of a pourable consistency. We're just going to pour the remainder of our honey butter right on top of our honey buns. Now we are going to put our honey buns in a 375 degree oven for 25 to 30 minutes. Spend 25 minutes. Nice golden brown. As you may remember, we put all that delicious honey butter at the bottom of our pan. So that way, when we flip our honey buns, we have all that ooey gooey goodness butter just all over our honey buns. You want to do it while they're still warm. You don't want to burn yourself, and it's probably going to make a bit of a mess, but it's worth it. While this pan is still hot, let's flip it. That flip didn't go perfectly, and that's okay. That's life. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. Maybe next time it'll flip better for me, or maybe next time it'll be worse. Who knows? But it'll still be delicious. Well, I hope. Let's taste it and find out. We have a honey bun. They're still very warm and sticky, but let's try it. Let's see. Oh yeah, it's definitely hot.
Self-eating again. Nobody told me honey buns are ready.
Hot, delicious. Inside is flaky and light. So good. Very hot. So if you like this recipe, try it. Let me know how it goes. Share in the comments what you thought of this recipe. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more videos like how to make homemade honey buns. See you next time.